Good evening. We are happy to share our story with you. We're going to go back a little bit because it happened a few years ago. So I'm just going to start with where our story began. So my fiance Andy and I had decided to escape reality. It was January in Michigan. We had just got past the holidays and all of our kids being home on winter break. We needed to treat ourselves to a little rest and relaxation, so we went to Florida. One of our favorite musicians was playing in a festival in Key West, so we flew to Fort Lauderdale, rented a car, and because we heard the drive to the Keys was amazing, it was something we should do, we decided to take that drive. All was going great. We even ran into our favorite musician on the street a couple of days before his show. We made the great time of it, and one night we decided to end early, came home around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, so that we could get up the next morning, go to this really great breakfast place that everybody was raving about, but had a big line and you had to wait to get in. So we went home early, got to bed early. During that night, I woke up and Andy wasn't in bed. And so I got up and I found him. He was in the other room and he was laying down reading. He said he just couldn't get to sleep. He had a headache. So a few moments later, he said his headache had definitely intensified. And he kept getting up and saying, "Oh my gosh, wow, where did that come from?" I finally got him back to bed, and I truly thought it was probably just a bad headache until I was getting up and getting ready for the morning. We were going to that breakfast place, and Andy says to me, "Can you get me 3 Advil and a glass of water?" I got him the 3 Advil and the glass of water, and in that exact same tone of voice as I was walking away, he said, "Lynn, can you get me 3 Advil and a glass of water?" It was in that moment and at that minute that I knew something was wrong. He was there, he was physically there and talking to me, but he was not there. His mind seemed blank, he was off. I begged him to let me call 911. He said absolutely not for a headache, you're not calling 911. After a few more minutes of me completely going over it in my brain, I started crying and asked him if I could just take him to the hospital. He said, "Where is a hospital in Key West? Do you think you can find one?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I can." So I, of course, Googled hospitals or whatever near me. It was tiny. It was very small. You would have thought it was like a, walk-in clinic, but it was a hospital. And once there, it was COVID, so they didn't want to let me in. They said I had to stay out in a folding chair in the parking lot. I'm like, well, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. He's like blank. He doesn't understand what is actually even wrong. She's like, "Oh, well, but he was walking, he was talking, probably being nice to them. They didn't think anything was wrong with him." So they're like, "He's fine. He can just stay here. You go out in the parking lot." So I had to go out in the parking lot and sit there. And it just wasn't settling with me. I couldn't do it. So I was relentless. They finally let me in, and they said, "You can come in." Within 45 minutes, they had done a CAT scan of his brain, and they had realized that he had bleeding in his brain. We didn't know why. We didn't know what was wrong. All that I knew is that he was being placed on a helicopter, and they were taking him to Miami to a trauma center that could actually treat him. They said he had blood on the brain. That was it. The helicopter was not for passenger riders. I was so confused. So I was left in the parking lot, looking up and watching him fly away. How would I find him? In Miami? What am I supposed to do? Who can help me? All of this was going through my mind, and that's when a nurse must have seen me as I was staring up and watching the helicopter take him away. I was in awe. I was actually in complete shock of what was happening. She came out to me and she said, "Honey, you need to go find your friends. You need to get your things from the hotel and go to Miami. You need to meet him." I said, "I have no friends here. We're only here together." Well, it was time to put my big girl pants on. I went back to the hotel. I threw everything that I could find in our bags. Well, mostly everything. I might have left a certain pair of shorts on a shelf. He won't let me forget that. He keeps saying, "I'd like to wear those black shorts." Oh, yeah, you left them in Miami or in Key West. Anyways, we checked out 2 days early, and then I had the daunting task of calling his kids. Oh my Lord, how do I do this? He has 4 daughters. Their ages 18 to 24. They had lost their mom to cancer 7 years previous, and he was their everything. What do I even say? So I did it. I went down the list. I called the oldest. No answer. The second oldest. No answer. Finally, poor daughter number 3 picked up, and all I knew was that her dad had bleeding on the brain and he was being flown to Miami for treatment. I was going to follow by car and would call as soon as I knew anything more. I was a basket case. I was almost unable to breathe and unable to put my mind where I needed it to be. But somehow, I say by the grace of God, I made it to the road. I put the hospital name in my phone, and Surrey was taking me to find Andy. About halfway through the ride, my phone rings with a funny number. I don't want to answer it. What is it? Who is it? What if they're calling to tell me that he didn't make it? If he passed before I could get there? What are they calling to say? Well, a friendly voice on the other end was the girl that was on the helicopter with Andy. She said the first hospital that they went to couldn't service him. They didn't have staff on hand, so they were going to put him back in the helicopter and take him to another one. She gave me a new address. I changed courses, and within a couple more hours, I walked through the door of a Miami trauma center to literally hear someone calling my name out loud. They were like, Lynn, is there a Lynn in the hallway? And I literally had just walked through the doors. I have no idea how that happened, but that was strange, but true. I go quickly with the team that's treating Andy to find him still awake and alert. And he says, oh, babe, there you are. I have a terrible headache. Really? Okay, Andy, I know. I was quickly shown images of his brain and told that he had suffered a ruptured aneurysm. A third of the people that have what he had never make it to the emergency room, or they make it to the emergency room and they're comatose, with a much graver outcome. The third that he was falling in, the category that he fell in, was that they're conscious, they're still interacting, but they're kind of confused. That was him. So they said, he has a ruptured aneurysm. They showed me the spot. They said, we need to do surgery to save his life. He has a 50-50 chance of survival, but if we did nothing, the brain would continue to fill with blood and he would die. I quickly got his oldest daughter on the phone, and I let her listen to all that we were being told. Within 10 minutes, he was taken back for a 4-hour surgery to hopefully save his life. Fast forward 4 hours, I'm alone in a waiting room. A neurosurgeon comes in, takes his hat off, and sits next to me. He says, I went to school for so long, I studied so hard for exact moments like this. He gives me a fist pump and he says, I can tell you that he made it. Surgery went well. I secured the bleeding. The aneurysm has been filled with coils. He has a very long road ahead of him, and I don't know what kind of damage or deficiencies he will have left, but he's alive. We would have to stay in Miami and in the ICU for at least the next 21 days. Our couple days away got extended. Wasn't quite the vacation we were looking for. Over the course of the next few days, it was clear that Andy was in tremendous pain. As blood was leaving the brain, it was painful, and he was confused. He's my go-to. He's my do-it-all guy. And he was struggling with everything. He was experiencing short-term memory loss. He knew who we were, but he kind of knew where we were. On occasion, he would get it right, but would constantly ask why we couldn't leave. He wanted to go outside. Who was sick? It wasn't him. Why was he being monitored? It's basically, all of that was basically on repeat for the next 7 days. We were counting our blessings because the patient next to us had suffered the exact same injury and he ended up not making it. The family had to stop life support after a few days. Andy had daily ultrasounds of his brain to watch for tremors and more aneurysms because it's more likely to happen in the 21 days after the initial one. Every single time the guy came in to check his brain, Andy'd like to shoot the, I'm not going to say that, with him.
The bull.
Yeah, shoot the bull with him. And chit-chat, everything was great, thought it was so fun. I could not handle these scans, so I would pretend I needed a coffee. I would leave because I couldn't sit there and watch and wait for them to say, everything looks okay. But For 20 days, they did that and everything looked okay. How lucky are we? He was treated there for physical and occupational therapy on a daily basis, and he quickly skipped and walked his way actually backwards. He wanted to really show off. He couldn't just walk backwards. He decided he could skip backwards to show that he was physically fine. So we passed the physical part. The occupational part, that was another story. He had no physical problems, and we are so lucky for that, but it was his memory. It was his mind. At the beginning, we would go for a walk in the ICU hallway. It was just one hallway, just back and forth, and he would have to look at our room number before we left, and the goal would be for us to take our walk and for him to be able to come back to our room when done. This was difficult for him, and he struggled. It was unimaginable for me at first. It was heartbreaking. But we learned to celebrate the tiny victories, such as the day that he did remember our room number and got us back without me even hinting as to which room was ours. Andy is a financial advisor. He's been a financial advisor for almost 30 years. He's a dad of 4 young women, all going in different directions. Lots changing every day, much to keep track of. He's always been on top of it all, always a step ahead and prepared for whatever might come their way. Especially after losing his wife to cancer back in 2015, this role as dad was especially important to him, to be there, to do all he could, and to do everything he could for his girls. When we started dating, I thought I was organized and put together, yet I didn't even hold a candle to him. We would be getting ready to go somewhere for a weekend, and he would have the bags packed in the car, towels, cooler, everything done, not missing a detail before I could even suggest to help. It was just what he did. He was a multitasker, a planner, a thinker, a doer. Wow, this patch we were going through, it was going to be a little tough on both of us. After we were released from the hospital in Miami, I had to decide how to get us home. We had flown to Florida and rented a car. However, the doctors suggested us not to fly home. So I rented us a one-way rental, and we drove the 20-plus hour drive home. I should say I drove. I drove as Andy was not cleared to drive, and this was extremely bothersome to him. He was on repeat, and when I say repeat, I mean repeat. It was like every 5 minutes he asked me, "Can anyone tell me why the superior driver is not driving?" A few minutes would pass, and I mean a few minutes, and he'd be like, "Why can't I drive?" I'm like, okay, that was 20 plus hours. But when we would stop to get gas, that was the worst part, because he was like, "Oh, you must really need a rest. It's my time to drive." No, the issue that I was facing as we were on this drive home was we went from 19 nights in the ICU to 1 night in a step-down unit to, okay, you're good to go. Go on your way. You're all set. Go back to Michigan, find yourself a neurosurgeon, follow up with your primary doctor, go to an occupational therapy. That's it. Here you go. Figure it out. I wasn't quite sure how to do all of that. Overall, we were being told that it would take time to see how Andy was going to recover. Would he be able to return to work, live on his own, care for his children? What would happen with us and our relationship? Speaking of that, we were only engaged. We had been engaged for over a year, but we had no set date to marry. We dated for over 5 years, so we were definitely committed to one another. But Andy needed my help. He needed in-home care. He needed me there. I was employed full-time, and for certain reasons, I could not take family medical leave for a fiancé. It wasn't covered. However, I worked in a courtroom, and the judge I worked for thought that this was total crap. I had worked for the county for more than 20 years, and I had never taken a leave for any reason. And now when I needed it, they're telling me no, there's no coverage. He suggested I reach out to my doctor and advise of the situation. I was able to get approved for a short-term leave due to stress and needing to be the primary caregiver for my significant other. This was approved for 12 weeks. Hallelujah. One less stress. We made it home. We saw his primary care doctor, made an appointment with a neurologist at U of M for the middle of March, and no one said much more. Keep playing the memory games you learned while you were in Miami from the occupational therapist there. Do scavenger hunts. Again, Andy's physically fine, however, his mind was not there. His short-term memory was not there. They just kept saying, give it time. It's all I kept hearing. Living that day to day as he wants to get back to normal was beyond difficult. I had pretty much Googled just about everything I could come up with different activities for us to do, something to keep him engaged, something to keep his memory sharp. But there I was. The primary care doctor did set us up with an occupational therapist in our hometown. We went 2 to 3 times a week for 6 weeks. Didn't see much of a difference. Before being told after that 6 weeks period, she says, okay, I'm done. There's really nothing more I can do for him. She said, he's outsmarting me. I don't know. I don't have anything else I can do. He was doing good, and at times he seemed so much better. But deep down, he and I both knew he wasn't ready to go back to work. He wasn't ready to manage other people's money or to even keep track of himself all day. I felt like we were on an island. It was just us. We didn't have the help or the resources we needed. The therapist we were seeing said that she could do no more, but she did suggest that we continue our therapy at a place called Origami in Mason. We started occupational therapy with Colette at Origami in May of 2022. We went 2 times a week, with the goal being to get Andy back to work. Remember, he's a financial advisor. It's what he does. He isn't ready to retire. He has a plan. It doesn't include stopping at 56. There was never a moment that Andy thought about not going back to work. He never once thought he would have to stop. He had one goal, get back to normal. If he said it once, he said it 100 times. We just had to figure out a way to get him there, and our first attempt at occupational therapy left us very leery. Colette immediately picked up on Andy. He is a people pleaser. He's a do-gooder. He's a smoozer of sorts. He can fake it. He can make you think he's great. He's perfectly normal. There's not a thing wrong with him. But in actuality, he didn't even know what he had for breakfast. He wasn't sure where he was going that day. He forgot regular, everyday tasks, but he wouldn't let on. And he had tricked the previous therapist. But Colette, she clued into it right away. He can not make her think he's great. Andy wasn't going to be able to fool her. And so our road to recovery began, and she encouraged him to do all the things that he could do to make him feel normal. Resume life, just without work for now. Your turn.
I don't know, that's hard to top right there. She's something. Colette immediately asked me about my goals. She had me describe a normal workday and the daily tasks that I routinely completed prior to my injury. She didn't have me play memory games or do math problems. She implemented activities that she personalized just for me and my care. She would have me manage or create a calendar for my schedule. She would interrupt me and see if I could go back to what I was previously doing. She would ask me to get online and find the closest place to get lunch delivered to us in 30 minutes, even though we weren't going to have lunch delivered to us in 30 minutes. Some days I failed, and other days I sailed. After I made a mistake, she would gently say that I missed this or that, but also pointed out the positives. She always encouraged me and had a way of downplaying my mistakes, which she knew were a big deal to me. Take things one at a time, slow down, and think before you speak, which I still have trouble with to this day. In my early days as a financial planner in the early 90s, I used a Franklin planner. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it's a scheduler that you put your daily tasks on and you keep your calendar of what you're going to do that day. And although I hadn't used one in about 15 years, when Colette would try to get me to prioritize my duties and use a to-do list, the Franklin planner mentality just came right back to me. I had used these tools previously, and in good fun, Colette and I would get a laugh out of me wanting to continuously refer back to my Franklin planner, which I didn't have. Similar tools, but a whole new world. I was taught to use the resources I had available to me to accomplish various goals. My phone became my life vest. I use it for everything and anything. I was taught to take notes on just about everything for a period of time. Anything I needed to remember, I needed to write down. And I had trouble with that at first, but soon realized that it's okay. I set timers on my phone for appointments and when to leave. Basically, anything or any place that I had to be or do was on my phone, and that's okay too. I take neuro breaks. This is just sitting there and not thinking or doing anything, and I didn't feel that this was necessary. However, I soon realized the benefit of sitting there and resting your brain, and I embraced the opportunity. I was encouraged to create an agenda for each client meeting, something I hadn't done before. Write everything down to review with them, and then go through the list, and then after they left, review it again and make notes about what we talked about. I needed to only focus on one thing at a time, no longer doing 2 or 3 things at once, which was my way, and it was hard for me because I like to multitask. Colette and her team at Origami helped me to overcome some of my major concerns. I had a big lack of confidence. I was indecisive in my decision making. I cared too much about what other people thought of me. And I just wanted to get back to work and get back to my normal life, what I called normalcy. Origami was the bridge that I needed to cross to achieve my goal of getting back to work with the confidence that I needed to resume my job and to do it properly. I will be forever grateful for Origami, giving me the tools I needed to get back to work and help my clients, to be the dad I was meant to be for my 4 girls, and now the husband to my wife, Lynn. Overall, Origami got me to where I am today. After 7 months I've been back to work as a financial advisor for a year now. I will celebrate my 30th anniversary in January 2024. I may not be the same guy I was prior to my injury. However, I am who I'm supposed to be, and I'm thankful for that with the support of Origami.
Although our journey and his injury may pale in comparison to some others that you've heard in the past or even here tonight, it was still a life-changing event for us, and we needed the help of a place like this to get us where we are today. We will continue to support Origami in all that they may have, and all of you. We will continue to support Origami and all of you. Many of you that may have found yourself on an island like us, with nowhere to turn, unsure of where to go, or how to go about life in a new way. Origami gave us hope, and we are sure that they will continue to do so for many others for years to come. Thank you.